All right, hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel, and we check out great theories and concepts and discoveries that are kind of off the beaten path. These are theories and discoveries and concepts that are suppressed. The powers that be, whoever those are, don't want you to know about certain things, especially powerful theories that would um, change you in terms of your quest for spiritual, mental, and physical health. And this is another Bible, excuse me, this is another Bible decode, number 428. And we focus on the New Testament for now and look at the Roman origins hypothesis, which is a suppressed theory. A lot of books out there on the Roman origins hypothesis. Not a lot of coverage, especially amongst the patriot truther Christians out there who have done a lot of digging, done a lot of red pilling, but done almost zero red pilling as far as the religion is concerned. You 10 years I've been paying attention to this, and I have hardly heard a damn thing about the Roman origins hypothesis. And that's why I'm making all these videos, because it's pretty obvious. Um, you truthers out there, you know what a psychological operation looks like. And if you look at the Gospels, especially read them with your copy of Josephus in hand next to you, read them at the same time. Uh, just tell me what you think. Some pretty startling coincidences. Now, when you also see the background that the Romans wrote the New Testament as a psychological operation against the Jews had been a huge headache for the Romans for a long time, and it culminated in a big war that lasted for 7 years from 66 to 73 AD. The incoming dynasty, the Flavians, under Emperor Vespasian and then his son, Emperor Titus, who were both veterans of that war and wounded in the war. They had a vested interest in making sure that there were no more wars. And so they wanted to figure out a way to mellow out the Jews, to tame the Jews, to domesticate the Jews, and ultimately to prune the Jews and to really transplant or graft the Romans onto the end of the Jewish lineage, thereby completely hijacking not only the Jewish religion, but really the Jewish culture, um, the Jewish nationality. And so what they did is they backdated a story by 40 or 50 years, depending on the gospel. And they set the story in the reign of Emperor Tiberius in the late 20s, early 30s BC, I mean AD. And at the same time, they wrote this history by Josephus, War of the Jews, documenting this war that we were just talking about. And in the Gospels, they portrayed a Jewish Messiah, who the Old Testament, books had talked about a Jewish Messiah as a military hero, one who was going to come and deliver the Jews from the occupying power, in this case, the Romans. So the Romans nipped that in the bud by making up a story about a Jewish Messiah who was a Prince of Peace and believed in rendering unto Caesar, walking the extra mile, um, and turning the other cheek, while at the same time being utterly harsh to the Jews, his own people, calling them vipers and hypocrites and um, overturning the tables of the Jewish money changers at the outskirts of the temple and yelling at the Jewish merchants selling small animals and at the temple, and being very lax and about not working on the Sabbath, performing work on the Sabbath, and um, ignoring the Ten Commandments or only listing five of them and then making a sixth one up that's not on the list, and um, you know, rejecting the kosher food laws and the cleanliness laws, and demanding that his disciples, who are Jews in general, who um, he demanded that they abandon their families to follow him. So these are all things that are designed to demolish the Jewish tradition and culture and the rituals. And then, throughout this goes throughout the Gospels. Never once does Jesus do anything against the Romans. And it's even more pronounced in the case of Paul. Paul is even more castigating of the Jews and uh, deferential to the Romans, um, blaming the Jews over and over again for killing Jesus. And every time that Paul gives a speech in the book of Acts, the Jews want to kill him. The Jews actually organized a hunger strike, saying that they would not eat until they killed Paul. Um, so, you can kind of guess from all that who actually are the true authors. But then when you consider that the Gospels are written in Greek, and which is a language that was pretty rare among illiterate fishermen and tax collectors and other of the people that would have been following Jesus and writing the New Testament. Whereas that is the language of the Roman Caesars, one of the two languages. And the mere fact that the Romans had complete control within their empire of publishing, distribution, and um, censorship. So it wasn't going to get written unless the Caesars approved of it. Was pretty much the score in the Roman Empire in the first century. The Romans also, this is exactly what their MO is. They created a bunch of other religions at this time, and for psychological purposes, for comparison, they created rabbinical Judaism in practically the same mythos as they did with the Christianity, except that the rabbinical Judaism was targeted toward the Pharisees, the Pharisaic Jews, while the Christianity was targeted toward the Messianic Jews more. And they created the cult of a bunch of the Caesars, along with Flavia Domitilla, a bunch of other religions. This is exactly what the Romans would do And this is exactly what the Romans did do. And when the Romans did it, uh, they had to make it look good. They had to put a lot of stuff in there that is inspiring and religious and pious and, affirming and edifying. Um, and so they borrowed liberally from traditions all over the world. That's why I think that ultimately Josephus was a think tank. He was a bunch of intellectuals, kind of a composite figure. And Josephus was known as Flavius Josephus of the Flavian dynasty of Caesars. And, um, there's stuff in the Gospels from Egypt, from pygmies, from Persia, from Greece and Rome, especially Stoicism, from the pagan mystery schools, Eleusis, uh, the astrology and numerology, magic, shamanism, ancient Egyptian, ancient Indian, philosophy and religion, mythology, and ancient Chinese, um, Confucianism, Taoism, uh, Japanese, and Sumerian. All of it's in there. All of it's in the New Testament. Everything that Jesus does throughout the entire Gospels has an antecedent. There's not a single thing in there that's original, as far as the life of Jesus and the events of his life. Every theme is lifted from older sources. And much of this is covered by Kersey Graves in his 1876 book called 16 Crucified Saviors Before Christianity. And we're about to start chapter 37 of this book, Physiological Absurdities of the Doctrine of the Divine Incarnation. There is also a physiological principle comprised in the doctrine of the divine incarnation, fatal in its practical and logical application to the divinity of Jesus Christ and all the other incarnate or flesh invested gods of antiquity. It is evidently fraught with much logical force. It is based upon the law of mental and physical correspondence. As is the physical conformation, so is the mentality is a law of analogy, which pilots us to nearly all our practical knowledge of the material, of the natural world. A knowledge of either serves as an index to the other. When we observe an animal possessing that physical form and construction peculiar to its species, we expect to find it practically exhibiting the nature, character, disposition, and habits peculiar to that class of animals. If it possesses, for example, the conformation of a sheep, we infer at once that it has the disposition of a sheep, and we are never disappointed in this conclusion. And when we encounter an animal with the tiger form, we expect to see exhibited the tiger spirit. If it possesses the well-known physical conformation of the tiger, we are never deceived or misled when we assign it a predatory disposition. If it is a tiger in form, it is sure to be a tiger in character and habits. And so all the genera and species of animals that range upon the face of the globe. We may travel through the whole field of animated nature and observe the infallible operation of this beautiful law of correspondence, till we come, however, to the crowning work of God called man. Here we find this law, this beautiful chain of analogy, broken by the doctrine of the divine incarnation. God becomes a man, at least is made to exhibit every external appearance of a man. All external distinction between God and man is thus obliterated, so that the very first being we meet in the street or on the highway, possessing the form, size, and physical conformation of a man, and presenting every other external appearance of being a man, may nevertheless be a god. And no less is this objection practically exemplified, and not less is the infraction of this beautiful law of analogy observable in the case of Jesus Christ, than in the numerous other incarnate gods and demigods of antiquity. Being in appearance a man, how was he to be, or how could he be, visually distinguished from a man? Or how could those men who were contemporary with him know, as they approached him or as they approached each other, whether they were meeting a man or a god, seeing that he was found in fashion as a man, as in Philemon 2:8, or maybe that's Philippians, I don't remember. Either he might be mistaken for a man or they for a god. They were constantly liable to be confounded. If then the infinite deityship was lodged in the person of Jesus Christ, it is evident that that important fundamental law of nature, as is the form, so is the character, was utterly annulled, prostrated, annihilated, and banished from the world by the act, so that all was and is henceforth and forever chaos, confusion, and uncertainty. For if the principle can be violated in one instance, it may be in another, and in thousands of cases ad infinitum. If one case could be allowed to occur, the principle is established, and nature's universal chain of analogy is broken and destroyed. For to intercept the law is to break the 10th and 10,000th link alike. Hence it is evident that if a being resembling a man may be a god, an animal resembling a cow may be a horse, and yonder stick a poisonous adder, and fatal may be the consequences in thousands of instances in judging or inferring the nature and character of an animal by its form and size. A supposed innocent animal might be a deadly enemy, or vice versa. Can we then believe, or dare we believe, a doctrine so atheistical in its tendencies as that the infinite deity was incorporated in the person of the meek and lowly Jesus, when it would thus set at naught, violate, prostrate, and utterly cancel from the world one of God's own fundamental laws and one of the essential principles of natural science, and banish forever the coordinate harmony of the universe, and thus inaugurate a state of universal disorder, incertitude, anarchy, and misrule into the otherwise beautifully law governed, well regulated domain of nature? Certainly, most certainly not. If the incarnation of the deity should or could take place, there should be something strikingly peculiar, infinitely peculiar in his figure, size, and general appearance, in order to make him susceptible of being distinguished from the human. Otherwise, men would be liable to be constantly mistaking and worshiping each other for the great Almighty and ubiquitous God, and thus constantly blundering into idolatry. And we actually find several cases reported in the scriptures of men, the saints themselves, being led into this error, being led to commit the high-handed sin of idolatry in consequence of their previous acceptance of the belief in a man God, that is, a God of human size and type. St. John, in two instances, was in the act of worshiping a being possessing the human form, whom he mistook for the omnipotent and omnipresent God, as in Revelation 19:10 and Revelation 22:4. Having perhaps been taught that the fullness of the Godhead dwelt bodily in Christ Jesus, he probably mistook the being he met for him, and hence offered to worship him. If then Christ's own inspired disciples could be thus betrayed into the sin of idolatry by having abolished the infinite distinction between the divine and the human, we surely find here a very weighty argument against such a leveling and equalizing doctrine, and certainly nothing could be better calculated to promote the sin of idolatry than thus to obliterate the broad, the infinitely grand line of demarcation between the infinite God and his finite creature man. Indeed, may we not here find the very origin and the cause of the now general prevalence of idolatry in pagan countries? Is it not directly traceable to the demolition of the broad, high, and insurmountable wall of distinction which ought forever to stand between a God of infinite attributes and a being caged up in a human form? Certainly, most certainly it is. Hence, here I would ask, how can Christians, after subscribing to the doctrine that the fullness of the Godhead dwelt bodily in the man Christ Jesus, condemn the people of any age or nation for worshiping as God their fellow beings, that is, beings with human form? Certainly, the man who could not believe that the infinite God could be comprehended or incorporated in the person of Jesus could easily be brought to believe that the Grand Lama of Tibet is a proper object of divine worship. He only lacks the substitution of names. Substitute the Grand Lama for that of Jesus Christ, and the thing is done. And idolatry thus becomes an easily established institution, and its abolition in any country an absolute moral impossibility. All right, well, that was a lot better than I thought. I thought he was going to get into the scientism of his age, late 19th century there, but instead he went with this physiological argument that I hadn't even really thought about there. So now I'm having a little bit of trouble here. I thought we were, I don't know, it seemed like a page cut off or something. I'm lost right now. I thought we were at the end of the chapter. Yes, we were. Okay. Um, Chapter 38 is called The Historical View of the Divinity of Jesus Christ. And we will get into that chapter tomorrow. For today, that will do it. And we will sign off. Thanks for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and contribute. And come back next time for another Bible Decode, number 429. And have a wonderful day.